Liberal Democrat Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I echo the Prime Minister's opening remarks about the Southport killings and the Holocaust Memorial Day? Can I particularly join him in expressing our immense relief at the release of Emily Damari and celebrate the fact she's back with her mum, Mandy, and the rest of her family. Let's hope we can get all the hostages released as soon as possible and the ceasefire turns into a lasting peace. Mr. Speaker, last week I urged the Prime Minister to speed up the Social Care Commission so we can get the changes people need implemented this year. The very next day it was announced that the chair of the Social Care Commission was also going to chair another important inquiry into grooming gangs. So the Prime Minister says that the job of chairing the Social Care Commission is so enormous that it's not possible to complete it within 3 years. Yet he also says that the chair of that commission, Baroness Casey, has got enough free time over the next few months to chair another inquiry. Very good point. Can the Prime Minister explain how both these things can be true?
Mr. Speaker, Baroness Casey is well placed to conduct the audit into grooming gangs, given her hard-hitting report on exploitation in Rotherham. It does not, he raises the issue, it does not affect her work on the Independent Commission on Adult Social Care, which begins in April. But as he knows, that report, or the first part of that report, will report next year, so we can deliver recommendations as we receive them. And he knows that already we're introducing fair pay agreements, providing more money for the social care funding, and putting up the allowance. So we're already taking steps. There will be a two-part report. We will act on the recommendations as they arrive, but this needs to be done properly.
Sir Ed Davey.
I still don't think the Prime Minister is making social care reform the priority that it needs. It's urgent. And so I'm going to keep coming back to this and holding to account. But, Mr. Speaker, turning now to the United States, can the Prime Minister guarantee that he will not sell out Britain's fantastic farmers to Donald Trump in a trade deal that undermines our high food and animal welfare standards in the way that the Conservatives sold them out in the Australia and New Zealand deals?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will work with the US, we will work with other countries, but we will never lower our standards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, the Prime Minister visited Epsom Hospital, where he committed to not just paper over the cracks in the NHS after years of Conservative lies. Yet on Monday, his government confirmed that our St Helier Hospital will develop these wounds and the hospital will crumble. Mr. Speaker, St Helier Hospital will not survive the delay this has introduced. People will die and NHS staff will break. So I ask the Prime Minister, will he apologise to my constituents as they wait years for a new hospital building? And will he visit the hospital with me to witness firsthand the dire situation our residents face?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, he's right to raise the concerns of his constituents, and I'm not surprised that they're frustrated or even angry at the lack of delivery under the previous government. There was no credible plan. Mr. Speaker, they shut. Let me read the Infrastructure and Projects Authority's verdict on what we inherited. This is their words. There are major issues.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Phil, I expect better from the front bench, and I'm sure you're going to show better, Prime Minister.
I think he was Liz Truss's right-hand man, so we wouldn't expect anything else. The verdict on the plan that he is talking about was this: major issues. This is their record. They shouldn't be chuckling. Major issues on the definition, the schedule, the budget, the quality and the delivery. It was a fiction, always was.
Joe Platt.
Expanding London's airports and building a third runway at Heathrow would be incredibly irresponsible in the midst of a climate emergency, flying in the face of the Climate Change Committee's advice. The Prime Minister clearly knows this because he and 7 Cabinet colleagues voted against a third runway at Heathrow in 2018. So can the Prime Minister confirm what is his position now?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to comment on speculation. He knows that we are, as a government, we are committed to growth, we're committed to the aviation sector and to our climate obligations. But I'm not going to take lectures from those who talk about climate change but oppose vital renewable infrastructure in their own constituency.
Will Stone.
when it comes to his budget, which raised taxes, raised borrowing and raised public spending as a strategy for economic growth, when is the Prime Minister going to accept the words of the Labour Prime Minister in the 1970s, who explained to a Labour conference that in all candour that option no longer exists, and that the only way to obtain sustained economic growth will be by cutting taxes and cutting regulation?
Prime Minister.
He must have missed recent reports. The ONS has just said that we've got the highest investment for 19 years. The PwC have just said that this is the second best place to invest in the world. The IMF have just upgraded growth, now saying we're predicted to be the fastest growing major European economy. Wages are up and inflation is down. That's after just 6 months.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Across England, there are 95,000 students who attend non-academised sixth form colleges. Of those colleges, 32 are currently on strike because the government didn't settle the funding for them back in last summer. I wonder, could the Prime Minister tell me whether he intended to create a two-tier education system for sixth form students who are the victims of the COVID crisis?
Prime Minister.
We have put more money into colleges, and it's really for them to deal with these disputes, as she knows.
Lee Ingham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From Stafford to Eccleshall to Loggerheads, my constituents are sick and tired of having their properties and businesses devastated by flooding. The last Conservative government did not invest enough in flood prevention measures to stop this from happening. Can the Prime Minister assure me and my constituents that he will prioritise flood prevention investment before the homes and businesses on Sandon Road in Stafford disappear completely into Sandyford Brook?
Prime Minister.
Well, my sympathies go to her constituents. Far too many are experiencing terrible flooding. I visited there last year and met them, and they talked me through the misery of their experience. We inherited flood defences in their worst condition on record. We are now investing £2.4 million in flood defences to better protect communities, and committed £60 million to support farmers impacted by the extreme weather.
Rebecca Smith.
Thank you. 2-year mortgages have hit 5%. Borrowing is billions above forecast. Retail sales have slumped. Does the Prime Minister still believe the Chancellor is doing a good job?
I thought she was just reading out their last record.
Final question, Mark Turmin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Excuse me. Before the last election, the Conservatives baselessly promised a fully funded scheme to deliver a new Watford hospital, something they have failed to achieve in 14 years. Does the Prime Minister share my frustration and that of my constituents that they unforgivably failed to budget for its construction, and Watford will only get its new hospital built and paid for thanks to the properly planned approach of this Labour government?
Prime Minister.
I'm not surprised his constituents are frustrated. There was never a plan. The funding only ever existed in Boris Johnson's imagination. It was pure fiction, and they know it. We have an affordable and delivery plan to build these new hospitals, and that includes Watford General, and we'll be getting on with it.